Recently, Supreme Court gave a decision, and in that decision, the Supreme Court has clearly said that the State Assembly has the power to question social media companies. The power of scrutiny. Scrutiny means close observation. When you observe someone or something closely, it is called scrutiny. Supreme Court has struck a blow for inquisitorial powers of legislatures against social media companies. Strike a blow. When you strike a blow means you say something forcefully. Strike a blow means to say something forcefully. It may be in favor of something, or it may be in, or it may be against something. So here it is for. So strike a blow for or against. Both conditions are possible. So here the Supreme Court has taken favor for what? Inquisitorial powers of legislatures. Legislation means law. The body that makes law is called legislature. In that sense, we can say that parliament is also a type of legislature, as well as we can say the state assembly is also a legislature. So here all the legislatures have been given power by the Supreme Courts, or it has been said by the Supreme Court that all the legislatures have powers. What power? Inquisitorial. It means they may inquiry from social media companies. In any case, the Supreme Court of India's verdict means judgment, last week, uphold means to maintain something, the authority of a committee of the Delhi Assembly to summon means to invite a senior official of Facebook. So recently what happened, the Delhi Assembly formed a committee, and that committee invited senior official of Facebook frequently. So recently in this judgment, so this judgment is an extremely nuanced recognition. Recognition means when you identify something. Nuanced means subtle difference. You can say that very light difference. It is called nuanced recognition of the extent of powers. Extent means your limit. Extent of powers of state assemblies in matters regulated by an act of parliament. So there may be some matters which are regulated by the act of parliament, but in those cases or in those matters, state assemblies have also some powers, and Supreme Court has recognized this power. And Supreme Court has maintained that there is a, you can say that there is a subtle difference, and in that way the Supreme Court has recognized the power of state assembly, that they can also form their committee on the matter which comes under the act of parliament. The question mark about the powers arose in the first place because Facebook. So editorial said that how the matter came up and what happened. The question mark about the powers arose means it came in the first place because Facebook. So what happened? Facebook, whose India Vice President Ajit Mohan was repeatedly summoned means invited, by Delhi Assembly's committee on peace and harmony, on the harmony means tuning, on the subject of the Delhi riots of 2020. Riots mean a violent activity by a group of people on a large scale. It is called riots. So in Delhi 2020 some riots happened, and in connection to these riots a committee was formed by the Delhi Assembly, and that committee repeatedly called Mr. Ajit Mohan. And who is Mr. Ajit Mohan? Ajit Mohan is India Vice President of Facebook. So the Facebook objected the Facebook objected this committee, है ना, the committee was repeatedly calling Mr. Ajit Mohan and Facebook objected it, and in this regard the whole matter was decided by the Supreme Court. So the Facebook argued before the Supreme Court. Facebook gave its logic before the Supreme Court that this was a case of overreach. When you try to overreach, overreach means you are crossing your limits and you are entering the area of someone. It is called overreach. So the Facebook said that the Delhi government is trying to overreach its power, and that Delhi's law and order came under the central government. So Facebook argued that Delhi's law and order came under the central government. So according to Facebook, the Delhi Assembly or the committee set up by the Delhi Assembly should not interfere in the case of Delhi Rights of 2020, because according to Facebook, the law and order in Delhi comes under the power of the central government. This was also the position taken by the central government. So the same thing the central government has also said, that the law and order of Delhi comes under the power of central government, which argued, the central government also argued that the Delhi Assembly had no jurisdiction. Jurisdiction means your area in this matter. Jurisdiction means your area where your powers are applied. So the central government has already said so many times that Delhi Assembly has no jurisdiction as far as law and order of Delhi is concerned. The social media platform also point out means to indicate something, to highlight something. So here social media platform has been used for Facebook. So Facebook also pointed out that it was governed by the IT Act of Parliament. So the Facebook said, if any case is to be formed, then that case should be formed under the IT Act of Parliament. And this is not there for something that any state government can be concerned with. Concerned with means if you are involved in any issue, then we may say that you are concerned with that issue. So finally Facebook said that our case comes under the IT Act of Parliament, and therefore the state government should not interfere in this case. The court in upholding the summons, but the Supreme Court maintained that the summons are right, didn't go merely means only by the legislative powers of a house. In upholding the summons didn't go merely by the legislative powers of a house. So the Supreme Court examined the case completely. Your legislative power means to have the power of making a law. It rightly said, Supreme Court rightly said, the assembly doesn't only perform the function of legislating. The function of legislating, I already told you, legislation. Legislation means law. Function of legislating means to the making of a law. So the Supreme Court said that this is not the only work of assembly to make a law, but there are also some other works related to the assembly. There are many other aspects of governance which can form part of the essential functions of the legislative assembly and consequently the committee. But the Supreme Court says there are a lot of work which should be done by the legislative assembly, and setting up of a committee comes under this same power. Its point was that the inquisitorial and recommendatory powers of a house can be used for better governance. If we want good governance, then we may use the recommendatory or inquisitorial power. So inquisitorial power means the power of inquiry, the power of questioning. When you recommend something means you refer something. So the Supreme Court said that if any state assembly sets up any committee and that committee recommends something, that committee asks some questions from any company, then these informations can be used for better governance. But it also cautioned the committee from transgress. Transgress means you can say that if you are entering inside my area without my permission, it means you are transgressing. Transgress means violation. Transgression means violation into any fields reserved for the union government. So while giving its verdict, the Supreme Court also emphasized the fact that any state committee should not transgress, should not violate its limits, and shouldn't enter the union government's area. Significantly, it is also important, the verdict comes amid means between a long phase of discordance. When you have discordance, means you have different opinion. There are two persons or two groups and both groups or both persons have different opinions. We will say that these groups are in discordance over legislative turf means area between the central government and the Delhi government. So we have seen that it has been a long time the central government and the Delhi government still fights over the power of legislation regarding Delhi, something that the bench led by Justice S.K. Kaul did not amid discussions about the spirit of federalism. What is federalism? In India we follow federalism. In federalism, the union government and the state governments work together. It is called system of federalism. So editorial says that the bench led by, so this decision was given by the bench led by Justice S.K. Kaul, and that bench also note that amid discussions about the spirit of federalism. So this bench also discussed the spirit of federalism and gave this decision. Not just that, it also comes at a time, and this decision has come at a time when social media intermediaries means the person who plays the role of if you can say that something is in between, like Facebook or WhatsApp, like Facebook, WhatsApp, Twitter, these companies may be called intermediaries because through that companies we get some information, we get some data. So when social media intermediaries are legally fighting some aspects of the new IT rules that govern them. So recently new IT rules have been passed by the union government, and these social media companies are fighting against these rules. So you can say, editorial says that in these circumstances this decision has been given by the Supreme Court. Their responsibility toward the many legislatures will only become more heightened because of this verdict. Editorial said that because of this verdict, now it will be compulsory for these social media companies to become more responsible towards any state legislature. The court refused to buy the argument. When you refused to buy the argument, to buy the argument means to accept. Buy the argument means to accept. So court refused means to deny. So the court refused to accept that social media intermediaries are merely a platform for exchange of ideas. So according to the Supreme Court, these platforms are not for exchange of ideas without performing any significant role themselves. Editorial, the Supreme Court said that these social media platforms play an important role. They play an important role in society. It then linked what happens in these platforms to the real world. Editorial says that what happens in these platforms is directly connected to the real world. Misinformation on social media. If somebody or someone gives wrong information on social media, the court said has affected a direct impact. Impact means influence. Vast means you can say that large. On vast, huge. Vast means huge. Areas of subject matter which ultimately affect the governance of state. So these social media companies have affected so many subject matters, and finally it affects the governance of states. Given means considering, taking into account the constraints means restrictions, limitations of the powers of the Delhi Assembly vis a vis means with regard to law and order. So editorial says that there are some restrictions on the Delhi Assembly with regard to law and order. The fact that the court found that its committee still could summon, but still the court has given power to the committee that has been set up by the Delhi Assembly, that it still could summon, that it still could invite the Facebook India official without encroaching, without violating. When you encroach something means you enter the territorial, when you enter the territory of someone, it is called encroaching. Encroaching means you can say that you are violating your limits. Encroaching upon the turf means area of the center. So editorial says that as long as the state committee is not encroaching the area of the center, it can summon the Facebook India official. And this decision now opens, this fact now opens the gates for scrutiny of social media platforms by other states. So editorial says that now the gates have been opened by the Supreme Court. Now many states, many other states also can scrutiny, can also do close observation of social media platforms. This verdict has made these social media platforms responsible against the every states, which however have significantly more power. Now these states have more powers with respect to law and order. The stage is set. Now you can say that the stage is ready for more scrutiny. Now more states are ready to scrutinize these social media companies.